A Muslim guy, he went to church and screamed Allahu Akbar. He would have been better off doing research, and I don't mean it al-Azhar. He should read Quran and see through its lies, and leave Islam like all the wisest guys. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. More poetic inspiration, more great literature, which has come to be the hallmark of this week in Jihad with the great David Wood. And David Wood is here with us tonight. How are you, David?
How's it going, Robert? Just sending out
David,
the link, telling people we're live. Telling people we're live.
we are never liver. This is the apex right here. This is the height that human beings can attain. This is it. Because I got to tell you, David, the poem today was based on a true story.
What?
Yes. All right, you got here the Sacred Heart Basilica in Paris. I've never been there, but it looks like a very elaborate structure. Look at all the stairs you got to go up to get there. And those are not hijabis. Those are apparently little pointy bushes going up all the way to the shrine.
Prove it.
Well, you know, at a glance, it looks like a bunch of hijabis in the yard.
Prove they're not hijabis.
Uh, and, well, you never know. But in any case, Sacred Heart Basilica in Paris.
1 second, Robert. 1 second.
Yes,
I'm an unstoppable fire hose of good ideas,
that's true.
but I forget them as fast as I come up with them. And so people like 2 years after I said something awesome will be like, "Hey, David, when are you going to do this?" And I'll be like, "Oh, that's hilarious." And I'd totally forgotten about it. Right.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, we have a skit called "Is It a Hijabi?" And you just go around and you're trying to figure out if things are hijabis or not.
Yeah, yeah. Like all those internet memes of guys confusing garbage bags for their wives,
Yeah.
things like that.
Anyway. There we go.
Anyway,
Sorry to interrupt. But I had to say it because if I say it, then someone else will remember it and then tell me about it 2 years from now when I've forgotten about it.
well, we'll have to check in on that in July 2027. But in the meantime, we got Sacred Heart Basilica here, and an individual of the Islamic faith went in there. He apparently saw all the hijabis in the yard and thought, this is the place for me. So he went in there
I can do some muta.
at Monday, July 7th at around 1:40 p.m. And he went up to the altar and apparently climbed up onto the altar while virulently gesturing, according to the report, and shouting 3 times, Allahu Akbar. And he attacked an employee who was trying to get him down. And what do you think they did after they finally got him out of there, David?
Probably talked about how wonderful Islam is.
Close. They talked about how he's mentally ill, and they're going to
Oh,
give
yeah.
him a
Oh, you mean
psychiatric
you mean as far
examination.
as the government? You mean as far as the government? I was thought you meant like what did the church do after
Oh,
that? I was
yeah.
like, oh, any church nowadays is going to be like, don't forget that Islam is wonderful and we're all on the same path and so on. But yeah, the government, yeah, they will say definitely say mentally ill
Yeah.
and journalists.
Hence the poem, Muslim guy enters a church and screams Allahu Akbar, based on a true story. And so that's France. Meanwhile, also in France, David, we got news out of Angers. I know you probably say that. What is it? Angers? Is it Angers?
I think it's au feu.
Yes. Angers. Angers, France. That's where they have wars with Germany and lose. Anyway, I know all the French people are going to be mad
wars
at
with
me now.
anyone.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
wars with anyone and lose.
I was seeing the. It's kind of an old joke now, but I was seeing when the when the president announced that the Americans were bombing the Iranian nuclear sites, people were saying, France has surrendered. So there we are. Okay, at the Pont des Arts et Métiers Bridge in Angers, or Angers. And what happened was three individuals, they assaulted a young woman returning from a party last April, and they have just been sentenced to, let's see, 2-year custodial sentence, which means nothing at all. And what they did was the victim was attacked by a man and two women on the bridge in Angers, suffered severe injuries, including a broken collarbone, cuts requiring stitches, and multiple bruises. Now you know why they call it Angers. She has missed a month and a half of work and counting. She was beaten after an argument erupted over her clothing. An argument erupted over her clothing. The ringleader of the attack was a 23-year-old gentleman named Mohammed Gadiri. What possible objection do you think he might have had to, could Mohammed Gadiri have had to her clothing?
I'm going to go with she's not covering up in order to not be molested, and therefore she's basically inviting herself to be molested. And she probably said, "Hey, you don't tell me what to. This is my country. You don't tell me what to wear." And he said, "Oh yeah, I do. Islam rules the entire world." And then said, "Oh, you're obviously asking to be molested," and then beat the crap out of her. That's what I would guess.
That's pretty much 100% there, David. I don't know how you do it. It's amazing. Meanwhile, speaking of Islam rules everywhere, let's get this guy's picture up here. This is Uziel Inacio Steck. Uziel Inacio Steck. He's a Brazilian. And for some reason decided to move to Germany. And he is also a homosexual. And so even stranger to me is that he got a job teaching at the Carl Bowl Elementary School in Moabit, and about 85% of his students are Muslims.
It's not going to end well.
Yes, you can see what's coming. Uziel Inacio Steck, who apparently has no clue, decided to... He's Jewish, by the way, but he decided that he was going to keep that a secret from his students, which was probably wise, but he decided to tell them that he was homosexual and that he was married, supposedly, to a man. And they began to mock him. They refused to go to his classroom. They called him filthy. One student shouted, "You're gay? I'm going to tell the whole school. You are disgrace to Islam," which is kind of wild since he's not a Muslim, but he's a disgrace to Islam. There he is. Look at him. He's a disgrace to Islam. And one other student told him, this school in Germany is a place where Islam is the boss.
I mean, they've got a point, right?
Yeah. 85% of the students are Muslims.
You know, that would have been, because this is an interesting fellow, checks a lot of boxes, but he could have actually run a little experiment. He could have walked into class, had all the students there, and said, "Hey guys, want y'all to know I'm gay and I'm Jewish. Now, show of hands, how many of you want to beat me up?" Oh, 85%, coincidentally.
Yes.
85% of you want to beat me up. Now, you have multiple reasons to beat me up. For those of you who want to beat me up, 85% of you, how many of you want to beat me up more because I'm Jewish? Show of hands, got that. And then how many of you want to beat me up more because I'm gay? And then got a show of hands. And how many of you, it's kind of 50-50 on why you want to beat me up or kill me or whatever. And would have been some interesting polling data on young people.
Would have been. But there is one other interesting detail of this story, and that is the reaction of school administrators. What do you think, David? What do you think they did?
Side with the Muslims.
You are correct, sir. You're batting 1,000 yet again this morning. Administrators urged Uziel Inacio Steck to adapt to the students' traditional backgrounds and avoid causing trouble. So there we have it. That's Germany today. That's Germany. That's France. That's just the way things are these days. But meanwhile, everything is good over in Russia. Oddly enough. I don't know if you saw this. Let me get the picture here. The Russian Orthodox hierarchy sat down with the Muslim leaders of Russia. There's the Patriarch of Moscow on the right-hand side of the picture. In the middle, Patriarch Kirill of Moscow. And then there's some Muslims in suits and ties on the left side of the picture.
See how the Orthodox show up in their traditional gear, while the Muslims just try to blend in and adapt to the culture.
Well,
I guess if the culture said show up naked, all the Muslims would have showed up naked, but the Orthodox, not them, buddy.
In Russia, anyway, that is the culture. Guys dress like that on the right. But anyway, at least the clerics. But the Muslims, they are showing how, you're right, how assimilated and westernized or Russianized or whatever they are. So, Patriarch Kirill of Moscow and Al Rus, he meets with Judge Mohammed Abdesalam, Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Elders, at the patriarchal and synodal residence in the Danilov Monastery in Moscow. Now, the patriarch said, this experience of interaction shows that representatives of these two monotheistic religions can live in peace and work for achieving common goals. On the basis of the experience we have gained in Russia, it is rather easy for us to establish and develop relations with Muslims all over the world. It's easy. This meeting was so good, the patriarch says, this shows we can live in peace. One meeting. Must have been a great meeting.
Yeah. Hey, let's get on the phone with all the Christians who are being massacred in Nigeria and tell them, hey, these Muslims in nice suits sat down with some Orthodox guys in Russia. So you can get along with all the Muslims who are killing you in the name of Allah.
Mm-hmm. All you have to do is have a nice meeting.
Yeah. And hey, church in Syria that just got bombed and, dozens of you got killed. They had a meeting in Moscow. So, everything's good now. And you shouldn't have a problem with all the jihadis who are slaughtering you in the name of Allah.
And he says, it is rather easy for us to establish and develop relations with Muslims all over the world. So I think if it's so easy, then Patriarch Kirill should be put in charge globally of ending the jihad. Mm-hmm. And all he has to do is have a few meetings with these guys, and everything's going to be great.
Yeah, meet with, dude. You could. I mean, we're a little skeptical. We're a little skeptical here. See, we think, you're in Putin territory where you can't get too far out of line or he'll crush you. But other than that, he's gonna love your religion as long as he needs you to be fighters for him and stuff. And so you guys have a pretty good environment there in Russia for this kind of thing. So we'd say, hey, it's kind of a combination of factors in your particular area that allows you to get along with Muslims. Just as there are people in the United States who can get along with Muslims. You can get along with Muslims at school. You can get along with Muslims at work and so on. There are places that allow that. To say something about how this would work in the rest of the world, that's like insanely delusional. Robert, it reminds me of the New Atheists the new atheists, like the core, and everyone keeps doing making the same stupid mistake, but really came to the surface with the new atheists when you had Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and Daniel Dennett and Christopher Hitchens. They're just sitting around in a room and saying, sipping on champagne and stuff or whatever these guys do, and looked around and said, "Hey, we get along, and we're doing a great job, and we're successful, and we're moral. We're not out slaughtering everyone who disagree. You know what? Why can't everyone be like us? Why isn't everyone like us? What do we have in common here? None of us are religious. Oh, so guess what? See, all we have to do is get rid of religion, then everyone's going to be like us." And that was their case. Hey, if we get rid of religion, everything's going to be like this scientific utopia type deal of all these guys sitting around and just making advancements for the good of humanity. And what actually happened? They basically paved the way for Islam to move in even more rapidly, and they're a bit confused. Like, why isn't anything getting better? Because they had millions of people who declared themselves atheists and so on, following this. Hey, we can make the world better by all becoming atheists, and then they're looking around, going, we had millions and millions and millions of new atheists, and the world doesn't seem to be getting better even slightly. Everyone seems to be going completely insane. But people keep making the same mistake of like, here's how things work in my little group, in my area of the world. Therefore, this is how they would work everywhere else. Mm-hmm. That is like huge mistake. And here you have Christians making the same mistake. Hey, look, we're getting along. We could do it here. Then it could be anywhere. Let's go talk to Boko Haram. Try it. Prove us wrong.
He made more mistakes, too. Patriarch Kirill of Moscow. He said that Orthodox Christians and Muslims have common understanding of a whole range of major issues related to human life.
Like Buddha.
Yeah, exactly. This is especially important now, when moral and other fundamental principles, such as attitude toward family, marriage, and the purpose of man, are being revised or even derailed in many countries of the so-called civilized Western world.
This guy's about 5 to 10 years behind the times, Robert. You had just a few years ago, you had all these conservative commentators talking about how we should unite with Islam. Christians should unite with Islam to combat the far left and so on. Failing to mention that, isn't it interesting that all these Muslim politicians end up on the far left? Like, why would you think why would you on the right think they're on your side? But we're going to agree that, they shouldn't be having drag queen story hour and things like that. Yeah, but they're going to disagree with you on some other things. And just what broke that down? The October 7th. That's what broke that down. Then. Really? All these, you had back then, you had all these conservative shows and stuff wanted Muslims on their shows to show how they're going to unite and work together to combat the far left. And then you had the October 7th attack, and all these conservative commentators who, were planning on working with Muslims and stuff, started noticing the Muslims were cheering for Hamas the entire time. And yay, slaughter the Jews, get the Jews, yeah. And they're like, this might not work out, except for the few that were willing to adapt, like Candace Owens and a couple others. They're willing to side with the Muslims against the Jews.
Yeah, the reason why I said really is because I was thinking about all the Christians who started rooting for Hamas, and I encountered a couple of those. That's actually why I wrote my book about anti-Semitism, but it's another story. Anyway, that is Patriarch Kirill of Moscow reflecting.
Hey, hang on! I did want to point out, because this is a trajectory that we should all be paying attention to. So you had conservatives, and they were looking at like all the far left LGBTQ stuff, and they're like, "Hey, we could work together with Muslims on this. We're on the same page." And then let's get together and we'll be a united front. And then, a bunch of people just slaughtered tons of Jews and were raping them and everything. And let's talk about this. Oh no, now Muslims are telling us that Hamas is the good guys and so on. And so that alliance broke down. But you're right. Now you have all these people jumping on the hating Jews bandwagon, and now they're the ones who are warming up to Islam.
Oh yeah.
You had the Hodge twins, whose channel is called the Conservative Twins, and they're actually like giving Islamic talking points now. It was shocking, Robert. They were trying to say how Iran doesn't actually want a nuclear bomb because, according to the Quran, if anyone kills a man, it's as if he's killed all mankind. These are conservative commentators, right?
Yeah.
Giving Muslim talking points from like 20 years ago that we've destroyed thousands of times, and now they're giving them to a new generation that Islam is peaceful and wonderful.
Yeah, you know, something a little bit off topic, but connected, related, you'll see. I felt like I was in a time warp myself this week when I just happened to see on Twitter, on X, some Muslim guy saying, the Quran tells Muslims to kill non-Muslims? LOL, and all these emojis of ridiculing laughter like it was the most absurd thing in the history of the universe.
And you quoted a bunch of verses, didn't you?
Yeah, because that's what I do, you know. And so I quoted 2, 191, 481, 489, 491, and 95, all of which say kill them wherever you find them. 95 actually says kill the idolaters wherever you find them. And 47:4, when you meet the unbelievers, strike the necks. And it went insanely viral with like 1.5 million views, and hundreds of Muslims say, of course, saying I was an evil idiot, a pig, the devil incarnate, all these things. But the most common thing that they said was, you're taking these verses out of context. And I thought, what is this, 2003?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard that in years. And yet that was all they had to say about this. And anyway, I think I'm going to have to trying to start making some more videos, and I think I'm going to have to do one about that and give the context.
It is interesting how like something can be an argument 20 years ago, and then we destroy it and we destroy it and destroy it, and it's dead. They stop using it because they can't even bring it up anymore because it's been crushed so horribly. And then so we stop attacking it because they stopped using it, and then 20 years goes by and they'll start using the same argument again because people aren't familiar with it anymore, and they can use it to deceive people once again.
Yep. Well, not today, Satan. But anyway, we will I'll have to get back to that. I hope tomorrow maybe I'll make that. But meanwhile, the same old things are happening in Europe. I actually have another story about France here. And this is about Dr. Alban Gervais, I don't know. But there he is, the late Dr. Alban Gervais. In 2022, 40 years old, he went to pick up his two children, two of his three children, ages 3 to 7, from a Catholic school in Marseille. And he's holding his little daughter, who's 20 months. And a man who has been identified only as Muhammad came up to him and started to stab him. Now, where did he stab him, David?
Not familiar at all with this story, but if I had to guess, I would say the neck, since you already brought up 47:4.
You are correct, sir. He stabbed him in the neck repeatedly, and he was screaming a certain phrase while he's... I can't even do it. It's just, I don't know. For a while we had, what was that other phrase they were yelling for a while? And we had it on one show. There were several different stories on the Quran of Mecca or something like that. But they've gone back to Allahu Akbar.
It never catches on. They try some variations, but it just doesn't catch on.
Yep. Allahu Akbar, the guy's saying. He stabs...
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, Robert.
That's it. Allahu Akbar, people should know, is a declaration of the victory of Islam. And the victory of Islam is manifested in the violent attack. That's why it goes together with jihad attacks so often. That the killing of an infidel, in accord with the Quran's commands that are so hotly disputed this week, that is the victory of Islam. That's what Allah wants. Kill them wherever you find them is not empty verbiage. So when you do it, you are showing that Allah is greater, that he's victorious over the infidels. So anyway, Dr. Alban Gervais was brutally murdered in that way, in the presence of his 3 young children, ages 7 and 3 and 20 months. And Muhammad is not going to be tried. He has been declared mentally unfit to stand trial. Once again, we see they don't acknowledge that there is such a thing as jihad. They have to call it something. So they bring in the psychiatric doctors. They say the guy's mentally ill.
And as we've mentioned many, many times, you can see exactly why this is. If you bombard people from the time they're in kindergarten in the West, you just bombard them with the idea that Islam is peaceful and wonderful, and that, obviously, if Islam says if anyone kills a man, it's as if he's killed all mankind. It says things this radically peaceful and tolerant. You'd have to be completely insane to interpret this as calling for violence. And therefore, when someone, Allah will kill you, he's obviously insane. He's obviously mental. Has to be.
Has to be. What else could he be? All right. Man, there's so much jihad and so many stupid infidels this week. I think we talked about Shirazi last week, the Ayatollah Shirazi, who put out a death fatwa on Trump and Netanyahu. He's 98 years old. Yeah, I believe we did talk about him last week. But a very piquant detail has come to light this week about this same Ayatollah Shirazi. And that is that way back in August 2016, which was, almost 10 years ago, Shirazi, the same Shirazi, sent a letter to Pope Francis. And he said, I'm really delighted to have heard your comments during your last trip to Poland, in which you stated Islam is not equal to terrorism, and further dismissed the association of violence and harshness with any and all divinely sent religions. Your wise and logical stance regarding Islam in dissociating the religion from the inhumane actions and atrocities of the Takfiri groups such as Daesh is truly admirable. Daesh, of course, is ISIS, the Islamic State. Takfir is the practice of declaring a fellow Muslim to be a non-Muslim, and all the Muslim groups do it, but the modern day Sunni jihad groups are often called Takfiri because they declare older Islamic groups to be non-Muslim. So anyway, Shirazi is out there praising Pope Frank for saying Islam doesn't equal terrorism, but now he is saying Trump and Netanyahu should be murdered, and that would be Islamic. Is he being inconsistent?
No, this all makes perfect sense from his perspective.
Exactly.
It does. When someone, put it this way, you've got Muslims who actually believe that Islam is peaceful, and they're peaceful people. That exists. They've usually people who've been westernized and so on. But you have Muslims who can call Islam a religion of peace and still believe in killing all the apostates and so on. This is just the path to peace. This is what you have to do. You can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. So yeah, of course, Islam's a religion of peace, and we're going to slaughter every obstacle to our religion so that we get our peaceful utopia. And then, of course, you have the people who understand this is not about peace. Of course, we're going to kill everyone. Of course, we want to slaughter everyone. But we demand that it be called a religion of peace anyway, because that just helps us deceive people. And so, yep, quite the spectrum. And it's interesting because you can have people with completely different thoughts and completely different reasoning, and some can be completely evil and some can be very nice. And yet they'll all tell you exactly the same thing, and you don't know what they actually believe.
It also should be borne in mind that Shirazi, as a Shia, can say that the Sunni jihadis are un-Islamic without thinking that violence in Islam is un-Islamic. It's just that it should be done by the Shia, not the Sunnis. And so that is the big difference. All right, let's find Hina Bukhari. This is Hina Bukhari. You can tell she's been suffering. She's barely eaten in the last year or so. And she is a, what is she? I have her title here somewhere. Oh, she's a member of the London Assembly for the Liberal Democrat Party. And so that is apparently some governing official in the city of London. And so she wrote to Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, demanding urgent, mandatory Islamophobia training across all institutions of the Greater London Authority to combat anti-Muslim hatred in London.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell that the Islamophobia is wasting her away. It's a wasting disease.
It is interesting how, I mean, you can have a country that invites people in, and then how many, hang on, let me look it up real quick. Aren't there like 1 million Muslims now in London? How many
Probably.
Muslims in London?
Wouldn't be surprised if there were
Whoa,
more.
1.3 million, over 1.3 million Muslims and so on. And then what's the result? Oh, this place is so Islamophobic. It's so hateful. We all need to brainwash people into never questioning anything that they're seeing for themselves with their own eyes out in the streets.
Yep.
Because think, what's the Islamophobia? It's like women posting videos saying they don't feel safe walking down the street anymore because they can't walk out of their apartment without being groped and harassed and so on by guys following them around and so on. And they post this sort of thing. What happens? Well, that girl needs to be re-educated.
Mm-hmm.
She is a filthy, disgusting kafir, and she needs to either convert to Islam or keep her mouth shut about how she's being treated. And that's basically the message towards the entire West right now.
Yes. Muslims are not being victimized, brutalized, discriminated against in London or anywhere else in the UK. The very idea is ridiculous. That he's called two-tier Keir, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, because he favors Muslims in the legal system over the interests of the non-Muslim British citizens.
Yeah, I was just reading about, I don't know if you were going to talk about him in this episode. We've talked about him before, but Zohran Mamdani, the front runner for being the next mayor of New York City.
Yes.
I was listening to one of his terrible, let's face it, terrible rap songs. It's one of the worst things ever. But there's that song where he was praising the Holy Land Five, saying, my love to the Holy Land Five, you better look them up and so on. And people focused on that. What's interesting is earlier in the song starts by talking about how sad he feels for his aunt because his aunt can't walk out of her apartment and feel safe in the United States of America because of all the Islamophobia. And he says she just lives in a state of constant terror in the United States of America because of the way Muslims are so horribly treated. Think about this, Robert. This is a guy, his mom is a film director. His dad is a professor at Columbia University. He's had a silver spoon in his mouth his entire life, and he's about to be the next mayor of New York City. He's an immigrant. He's about to be the next mayor of New York City.
He's been here 7 years. That's a really good trajectory from arriving here 7 years ago to being mayor of New York City.
And complaining about how horribly Muslims are treated in this place. Isn't this interesting? It's like there's nothing you could do that they would not complain. There's nothing. You could be a Muslim and we could roll out the red carpet for you, get here, shower you with money, give you a mansion, and you'd still be complaining about how horrible this is to Muslims.
Yeah, because that's how they get the stuff. And I do have a Mamdani story that you may find amusing. Let me get it here. This is, let's see. Okay. Go to my photos here. This is a screenshot from a video. looks like Mamdani is speaking in a church, but it's a very far left church because it's got the rainbow, the gay rainbow business up there. And there he is on the left. You can see him in the back in a green shirt, and he's speaking. And the person, there's a heckler, and the heckler is a Muslim in a hijab, and she's yelling at him. And you can see from the screenshot, one of the things she says is, "How do you pray every single day to Allah? How do you pray?" And she's mad because he's appearing at this gay pride event. And she calls him a hidden Zionist ally and a hypocrite who sides with his oppressors. And I thought, well, there we see we've talked a lot about the alliance between the left and the Muslims in the United States and really all over the West, and how it's cracking under the strain of the left's obsession with sexual libertinism. And here it is again. He's trying to shore up his leftist base by going to this gay pride event, and he ends up getting yelled at by a Muslim.
Well, as we've mentioned, he is 12 or Shia. He is 12 or
Yes.
Shia. That's the pattern, right? I mean, it's become the pattern for Muslims in various places, but the main place where you saw this work was the Iranian Revolution.
Yep.
Iran had a monarchy for like 2,700 years. They had a monarchy for 2,700 years. How are you going to finally break that? Well, you had a bunch of communists, you had a bunch of socialists, and you had a bunch of radical 12er Shias who all had two things in common. One, they hated the regime. They hated their own regime. They hated the Shah, and they hated the West, Western imperialists, and so on. And so, wait a minute, we're all on the same side here. So they worked together. They got rid of the Shah, and then the Muslims killed all the leftists who helped
Yep.
get them into power. So you're looking at that. That's the, hey, we're Muslims. We want to bring all this crashing to the ground. Who else wants to bring all this crashing to the ground? Communists, socialists, and each side thinks, oh, we'll unite until we get what we want, and then we'll deal with our disagreements and so on, not realizing you're going to lose that, guys. You're going to lose that one.
Yep. All right, let's shift gears a little bit here. Over in Afghanistan, I think we talked last week about a story, maybe a couple weeks ago, but I know that we discussed it. A 45-year-old man was going to marry a 6-year-old girl. And so we discussed the endless business with Aisha and how Muslims denied it. Islamic apologists denied that Aisha was 6 and then 9 when Muhammad raped her. And it's all something that they own up to now and are completely happy with. But in any case, the marriage, you'll be happy to hear, David, the marriage has been called off. And none other than the Taliban told this 45-year-old man that he could not marry the 6-year-old. The Taliban. They told him he had to wait till she was 9.
I have to say, when the Taliban says, hey, man, you're going a little too far here, you got some problems. So, yeah, there's a lot of weird things going on here. So, one, you have the Taliban stepping in saying, hey, you can't do that to a 9-year-old. Got to wait. I mean, you can't do that to a 6-year-old. You got to wait till she's 9. So there's that the Taliban's actually being more moral than this guy and then some Western Dawa guys like Daniel Hakikachu. There's no waiting until a girl is 9 and so on. That just happens to be when Muhammad had sex with Aisha. So there's that the Taliban is apparently better than some of these guys. Two, that the Taliban's wrong. Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6. He consummated the marriage when she was 9. Maybe they're thinking, hey, if this guy marries her, he's just going to move right in for consummation. And for that, you should wait until she's 9. But there's that's wrong. That's false. It's not, hey, Muhammad had sex with a girl at 9, therefore that's when it's allowed. It's just that's when Muhammad happened to have sex with Aisha. It wasn't, hey, this is now the minimum age. But you have the Quran, Surah 65, verse 4, which specifically talks about marrying, having sex with, and divorcing girls all before they've ever reached puberty. And so it's glad the Taliban is at least making this guy wait a couple of years. I wish they'd make him wait longer. Glad they're at least making him wait a couple of years. But from an Islamic perspective, they're just wrong.
Yep, you're absolutely right, David, and I think it's worth revisiting some Islamic authorities that say exactly that. The Diyanet, Turkey's Directorate of Religious Affairs, said in January 2018 that under Islamic law, girls as young as 9 can marry. So that would seem to support the Taliban against what you're saying. However, then we have many other Islamic authorities saying exactly what you're saying. The Council of Islamic Ideology in Pakistan, which is a government affiliate and has great influence over the government, says Islam does not forbid marriage of young children and doesn't give any minimum age. Ishaq Akintola, a professor of Islamic eschatology and director of Muslim Rights Concern in Nigeria, he says Islam has no age barrier in marriage, and Muslims have no apology for those who refuse to accept this. Dr. Abd al-Hamid al-Ubaidi in Iraq, an expert in Islamic law, says there is no minimum marriage age for either men or women in Islamic law. The law in many countries permits girls to marry only from the age of 18. This is arbitrary legislation, not Islamic law. And Dr. Saleh bin Fawzan from Saudi Arabia's highest religious council says there's no minimum age for marriage. Girls can be married even if they are in the cradle.
I'm just thinking about the, you've got the different schools of thought and so on over time, but I'm thinking just based on the Muslim sources, it says prepubescent.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right, we have some violent jihad. We have one in Australia. This is a man who calls himself Angelo Loras. And so when I saw that his name was Angelo Loras, I thought, oh, this is another leftist, because what he did was he went over to the East Melbourne Hebrew Congregation Synagogue in Melbourne, and he set a fire at the front door while about 20 people were inside having the Shabbat meal. And he set this fire, poured a flammable liquid on the front door of the building and set it on fire before fleeing the scene. Seems as if he wanted to get into the building and set the fire inside because he was ringing the bell, ringing the buzzer or the bell, whatever they had. And there was a kid whose job was to watch the security cameras, and he didn't recognize this fellow, thought he looked suspicious, and did not open the door. And that's probably saved a lot of people's lives. But he did set a fire there. And so, as it turns out, all this time I thought the guy was a leftist. Angelo Loras, he calls himself. But as more has come out about it, turns out he had an ex-Twitter account where he described himself as single Iranian forklift driver, music lover. So I don't know about the music lover, that's haram. But an Iranian, if he's an Iranian, then I don't know where the Angelo Loras name comes from. Could be any number of things. Maybe the Iranian is on his mother's side. Maybe it's a name he took. But it also opens up the possibility that he is motivated by the familiar Islamic anti-Semitic passages that are all over the Quran and Sunnah. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd need more info to make a decisive call, but kind of coin flip on that one.
Yeah. I mean, after all, the leftists at this point are doing the bidding of the jihadis, so it's really a distinction without a difference anyway. Meanwhile, another house of worship was in the news, and this is the Cathedral of Ani in eastern Turkey, in what land that was for centuries Armenia. And Ani, A-N-I, was a very considerable Armenian city for many centuries until it was conquered by the Turks and Islamized. And so this was the cathedral, and you can see now from the picture that it is in the middle of an open field. And so a lot of people think, what, actually I had people on Twitter saying, what is this? There's nothing there. Why did they have a cathedral out in the middle of nowhere? Well, when the city was a thriving Armenian Christian city, then there was a lot of other infrastructure in this area and buildings around the cathedral, but that's all been destroyed. And the cathedral, you can see, is just a ruin, but it's now being built back up, and you can see the scaffolding on the outside, because the Turkish government has announced that they are reopening the historic Armenian Cathedral of Ani and are renovating it. But there's just one catch, David. What do you think it might be?
They're going to Hagia Sophia that thing and make it a mosque.
You're correct, sir.
Definitely not enough mosques there.
Not enough mosques in Turkey, so they have to take an old cathedral that's just a ruin and make it into a mosque. Now, why would it be attractive to them? Why would they not want to just build a new mosque? They could even build one near that old, if they want to have one in that area. We saw the picture. I'll put the picture back. You can see a lot of open area there. They could plenty of room to build a mosque anywhere else. Why do they have to make that into a mosque? A landmark historic cathedral that is dear to Armenian Christians.
Well, it's a show of strength, and they've always been obsessed with this, right? What does Muhammad do? I mean, he could have built his own center of worship. No, we got to take the Kaaba, this pagan center of worship. We got to have that. Shows how strong we are, and then we crush all your idols and so on. And then you understand that we're strong. And you see the same thing with Hagia Sophia. You see the same thing with the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. You've seen the same thing many times with Hindu temples. That's how you show that you're strong and you're taking over, and that religion is all for Allah.
Allahu Akbar, that's it. Allah is greater. And so Allah shows he's greater by taking over the cherished sites of conquered people and Islamizing them. And so that becomes a visible sign of the victory of Allah. And that's what this new mosque will be. All right. Interesting story out of Israel. I thought that a lot of talk now, of course, about establishing a Palestinian state. A lot of people assuming that a Palestinian state will solve the problem between Israel and the Palestinian Arabs once and for all. And it got so far as to have France and Saudi Arabia, high-level representatives of both, I think maybe even Macron himself, were going to go to New York a couple weeks ago and establish a Palestinian state. Now, I think that's kind of nuts. Nobody asked me, but okay, a French guy and a Saudi are going to go to the United States of America to take land from Israel to establish a Palestinian state. No Israelis, no Palestinians involved, apparently, or Americans. But the French and the Saudis were just going to do it themselves. Now, the bombing of Iran intervened, and they postponed that establishment. But it seems like a Palestinian state is practically a fait accompli. It's already recognized, even though it has no actual territory, no actual government. It's already recognized by many countries around the world, has almost complete nation status within the UN, and so there's really very little left. So Netanyahu was over here talking to Trump, and he said no, he was against that idea. Now, he's like the only one left who is against it. But he said, I think the Palestinians should have all the powers to govern themselves, but none of the powers to threaten us. That means a sovereign power like overall security will always remain in our hands. And he said, after October 7th, people said, the Palestinians have a state, a Hamas state in Gaza, and look what they did with it. They didn't build it up. They built down into bunkers, into terror tunnels, after which they massacred our people, raped our women, beheaded our men, invaded our cities and our towns, our kibbutzim, and did horrendous massacres, the kind of which we didn't see since World War II and the Nazis, the Holocaust. So people aren't likely to say, let's just give them another state. It'll be a platform to destroy Israel. Is he right?
He's absolutely right. And it is interesting that you have like France saying, "Hey, we'll go ahead and decide what happens down there," because Robert, that always tends to work out well, doesn't it? The European nations, let's get a map and we'll draw some lines and declare what happens in these various places, and it always works out well, 100% of the time. But you can imagine why he's doing it. I mean, he could be a true believer and so on, but there's just massive pressure from Muslims and leftists screaming at him to do something, and he has an opportunity. Hey, I could be the hero.
Yeah.
Be the hero of all these guys right now. They'll love me forever. They'll vote for me forever.
That's it.
Forever.
So in anticipation of this meeting, which apparently is going to happen sometime, and the French are going to declare a Palestinian state, Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, said, why don't you put it in the south of France? Put it on the French Riviera. You got this massive Muslim population there already. Just put all the Gazans there. It'll hardly make a difference. Thought he's got a point.
Good point. Very good point. That is a good point. I mean, obviously no one's going to do that in France, right? But it's this giant, huge world, and there's just this obsession. We need to have this spot right beside all these Jews that we want to slaughter.
Yep. That's it.
That's the only place in the world where anyone can live, right in this spot that we need to go slaughter Jews.
There have been refugees everywhere in the world, and every refugee problem has been solved with varying degrees of peacefulness, but still solved. And then there's this one nagging refugee problem that never goes away, and it happens to be, we have to have this land of the Jews, where Islamic theology, Islam's sacred text says, drive them out from where they drove you out. And there you go. Meanwhile, we had the 20th anniversary of the July 7th, 2005 Jihad attacks in London. And Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, he said, today the whole country will unite to remember the lives lost in the 7/7 attacks, and all those whose lives were changed forever. We honor the courage shown that day. Blah, blah, blah. Those who tried to divide us failed. We stood together then, and we stand together now, against hate and for the values that define us of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law.
Those who seek to divide failed? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I thought that was the part that jumped out at me as well.
Who are those who want to divide?
The jihadis.
Yeah, in that context, it's the jihadis.
But he means Tommy Robinson.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, those who want to divide us have failed. Who's that? Oh, the people who want to draw attention to what the jihadis are doing. So you got the jihadis, they want to divide, and then you have the people who are pointing out, hey, we got a problem here because this calls for our violent subjugation. And then you have the people who want to put their heads in the sand and just let Islam take over. And no one's gonna stop us from doing that. No one's gonna stop us from paving the way for Islam. Although I have to say, Robert, given how there's been these insane reversals, like if you want to make a movie now about some attack or something like that, or we saw it with the signs about groping in Germany, where they have to reverse it. If you want to say no groping, you have to say it's white German women who are groping poor Muslim immigrants with one leg and so on. You have to reverse everything. So at this point, I mean, we're far enough away. I mean, we're 20 years away from the 7/7 attacks. It's like I actually, it wouldn't surprise me. It just won't surprise me one day if they say, and on that day when white far right thugs attacked the train and Muslim jihadis went in to stop the far right from this attack and defend us all, and it's getting to that point where everything's reversed.
It's extremely close.
We
As a
live in
matter of
opposite
fact,
world.
I had not planned to talk about this story, but I set up a story for tomorrow on Jihad Watch, and so I will go into that here. Kari Asim, who is an imam, a prominent imam, and an Islamophobia expert in the UK, he was talking on July 6th, the day before the anniversary, and he said, the emotional and social toll of 7/7 on Muslim communities was profound and is felt by many to this day. So there you have it, right there. Islamic jihadis carry out jihad massacres, and Muslims are the victims.
Oh, they are after every Islamic terrorist attack.
Yep. And Kari Asim says Islamophobia has consistently increased in the last 20 years.
Oh yeah, hey Robert, that's the other interesting thing. That's the other interesting thing that I was mentioning earlier. Ties in with this. Zohran Mamdani talking about how his poor aunt can't even leave her apartment because she's so terrified of all the people who are attacking Muslims in the United States of America. And you're thinking, where does this happen? But so suppose it happens somewhere. Suppose it happens. Someone attacks a Muslim. Then are you justified in being scared of non-Muslims in general?
Every last one.
Now think about this, guys. Okay. Because this is like Islamic supremacist baked in your head thinking. If any Muslim has ever been attacked in the history of the United States, then any Muslim is entirely rational and justified in being completely terrified of every non-Muslim, and you should be scared of even walking down the street, right?
Right.
But if you live in the same area and you say, hey, Muslims actually killed 3,000 people here and slaughtered tons of people, or if you're in the UK, killed a bunch of people on 7/7, or you are a victim of any of the other number of attacks, Israel or wherever, and you say, I have a problem with this ideology, or I'm somewhat concerned about these other guys who are thumping their chests and blocking roads and so on. They say you have a mental illness. How could you think just because these guys slaughtered thousands of people that you should be at all concerned about the ideology or about anyone else in the community? How dare you? You must have an actual mental problem. And yet he can talk about his poor aunt who is scared to walk down the street because of Islamophobia. Yeah. Why is it okay for someone in your group to be terrified of a bunch of people who've never harmed her at all? But if someone else from a non-Muslim says it, and it's someone in your group that they're scared of because of what people in your group have done, they have a mental illness, and we need to combat Islamophobia.
Yep. Two tiers, Zohran.
2 tiers.
2 tiers, Zohran.
Have people started calling him that?
I just did.
I'm going to call him that in a video.
All right. I got to get this guy in because his courtroom drawing is so good. That is Abdulaziz Kawam, and he's out in British Columbia. And he, on April Fool's Day, 2023, you'll see why this is a story this week, but he was actually just found guilty of attempted murder, but I'm getting a little ahead. On April Fool's Day 2023, he goes to a bus stop and he gets down and starts doing his prostrations and prays. Then he slashes the throat of a person waiting for a bus. Then the bus comes. They don't see that there's a guy with his throat slashed there, and he gets on the bus. He goes up to a guy, asks him if he's a Muslim, and then the response is not recorded, but he ends up slashing the throat of somebody else on the bus. He's connected to the Islamic State, has multiple contacts with ISIS propagandists, gave the Pledge of Allegiance to the Islamic State. So we have, he prays, he slashes throats, he makes sure his victims are not Muslim, and he's connected to ISIS. And he's been declared mentally ill, and he may face no penalty as a result. Now, I don't know how the guy could get more Islamic, more of a jihadi than that. He prayed before the attacks. He slashes throats in accord with the Quran. He asked the guy on the bus if he was a Muslim, so he makes sure not to kill a fellow Muslim. He's tied to ISIS, pledges allegiance to the ISIS caliph, and he's mentally ill. Has nothing to do with Islam.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Just think about it. The more ingrained in your head it is that Islam is a religion of peace, and there has to be something wrong with you if you interpret it as violent, then the more obviously you support Islamic terror, the more insane you have to be, Robert. So
that's it. All right. Got a few super chats here. Mother Hulda says, which book of yours should I start with? Well, it depends on what you're interested in. For the Quran, I've got in general introduction, the Complete Infidel's Guide to the Quran, and then a full new translation and commentary on the Quran, the Critical Quran. For Muhammad, I've got the basic story, the truth about Muhammad, and then a historical investigation of whether these stories really happened or if they're fable and fiction, and that's Muhammad, a critical biography, along with a consideration of the question, did Muhammad exist? Got the history of jihad, which that's the only history of jihad that exists that I know of. Got the Palestinian delusion, which is about the Israeli conflict with the Palestinian Arabs. Got what else? Those are some of my favorites. Anti-Semitism, History and Myth is about anti-Semitism. Anything else, David?
Any history in that book?
Anti-Semitism, yeah, there is some history.
I'm saying because you said history and myth. Yeah, everyone needs to read the history of jihad. Let's agree. Let's agree that everyone on the planet needs to read the history of jihad.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna put that on Twitter.
That is. Let me put it this way. People being ignorant of the history of jihad gives a massive and decisive advantage to the jihadis who want to subjugate the entire world. And normally when we're criticizing jihad, I mean, people, like me and so on, we normally talk about things that Muhammad said and things that the Quran say, and then we talk about recent events. And what's missing from there is the 14 centuries in between of endless, relentless attacks against non-Muslims. And when you read the history of jihad, they are not stopping. This is just a relentless obsession with conquering us all. It never lets up. The only time it even pauses is when they are forced to pause because they're just massively overpowered. And all they do then is start regrouping and planning for the future and rebuilding and so on. But there is always this obsession with taking over. And you get down to, because our leaders and so on are not familiar with that, then it's just, hey, let's invite as many of these guys in as possible.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, so an informed population or some informed leaders would not have fallen for that nonsense.
Indeed. All right.
Hey, Robert, you need everyone starts off with the kids. They target the kids to get the kids. They start brainwashing the kids. You need to inoculate the kids at a young age. You need history of jihad for 6-year-olds. Little cartoon book.
Oh my goodness, that would be a cheerful kids book.
Mm-hmm.
The Jihadi in the Hat. All right. Abu Bakr al Puftadi says, Mr. Spencer, AP will be speaking at a conservative conference. Yeah, that's very good. Being a veteran of such events, what advice do you have? Well, AP doesn't need any advice from me. He's an accomplished intellectual, and he's very well informed and well spoken about these issues, especially because moderate Muslims attend due to tax policies or culture war issues. Well, all I can say is, and I'm not saying he should do this, but if I were speaking in such an event, I would confront that head on. And I've done that before when there were Muslims at conservative conferences, asked them to renounce the aspects of Islam that are at variance with constitutional freedoms and so on, and tried to argue, tried to convince the larger crowd that, well, there are deep incompatibilities between Islamic law and the U.S. Constitution. So if you have Muslims living here, they're going to have to make a choice about the two, between the two, and so we should be drawing attention to that. Deborah Leonelli says both of you are awesome. No, you, Deborah Leonelli, are awesome. Don't you think Deborah Leonelli is awesome, David?
Yeah, but I was also thinking she's right.
Yeah. Abu Bakr al Puftadi, Trump admin takes HST off terror list. Agree? No, I don't agree. Hayat Tahrir Sham is who I assume you're talking
that's
about.
That's HTS, Abu
Yeah.
Bakr. That's
Not,
HTS.
not Harry S. Truman. He was not on the terror list. But Hayat Tahrir Sham is, there's no indication it's not a G, especially after the massacre in the church, which is just a few weeks ago. I don't think there's any clear indication that they have stopped being a jihad group.
Yeah, we definitely and obviously do not trust these guys. I kind of understand Trump's thinking. It's like they're saying, "Hey, we're going to give you. You guys are saying you're different. Doesn't make a lot of sense to believe you, but we're gonna give you a chance to prove that you're really different. So we're gonna take away the sanctions and so on, and let you show what you can do. And of course, if this blows up in everyone's face, like literally, then well, they tried, ladies and gentlemen, they tried. There's also there. I think there's also like behind this, I mean, obviously, like behind the scenes negotiations and deal making with other nations. Like when he announced that he was going to be removing sanctions for Syria, you had the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia there and everything, and everyone's cheering. Everyone's cheering. So obviously, it really seems like he's trying to unite the area against Iran, make sure everyone else is on the same page against Iran and so on. So anyway, yeah, it's I'm sure there are some behind the scenes deals that connect these things. It's not just, hey, let me do this really, really helpful thing to this terrorist group. There's something else. There are other things on the table that's connected to.
We can hope that it works out, especially for the Christians and the Alawites in Syria who are deeply threatened. Their lives are threatened by the jihadis now.
Yeah, and that's the problem if these deals are going bad, that you can basically be selling people to destruction on an altar of some deal you made.
Exactly. And that's the hazard. David Kazashi says, Muslims, we accept no gay men but Momo who was zooted. Yes. The gift that keeps on giving. Abu Bakr al Puftadi says, because Moscow meeting, Dr. Wood, will you now have to debate AP? Orthodox and Muslims worship the same God. Mr. Spencer, agree or not? Calvinism and Islam similar. Yeah, I agree that Calvinism and Islam are similar. I did a video just the other day about the free will in Islam and how it was rejected explicitly and ruled a heresy, the idea that Muslims have free will. The Quran is ambiguous on this point as it is on so many points, but Islamic tradition is very clear. There's no free will. As far as Orthodox and Muslims worship the same God, I'm with David on this. He said last week, depends on how you look at it, and that's really the key to the whole question.
Yeah, AP's on the same page too. It's he would I don't think he'd be compelled to go along with what is it? Patriarch Kirill? What's he called? What's Kirill
Yeah,
called?
that's right.
Patriarch.
Patriarch
Yep.
Kirill of Moscow.
Yeah, because AP can point to other things that other Orthodox leaders have said.
Yeah, there's this is not like some kind of, well, this is not a Catholic situation with a pope where he says something and you have to fall in line. There's a variety of opinions that are possible on this issue, and I think David did sum it up best. Really, that it's well, you can say it better than I can since you are David.
Yeah, if you wanted to say something in some generic sense, like we all worship a creator or something like this, or whoever created the universe, we're worshiping that being, and Muslims are just they got the details wrong or something like that. You can say it. It's just not helpful. It's not helpful. It gives people the wrong idea. You have to make all
Yes.
kinds of qualifications because it sounds like an all paths lead to God type thing. And so you have to clarify, no, I'm not saying that we shouldn't evangelize or that they're correct in their understanding or something like this. Um, so yeah, not very helpful. Not very helpful. You've got to. They worship a god. They worship a god who came from a pagan origin, part of a pagan pantheon, and then Muhammad comes along and says, "That's my guy, and he's the one who inspired the Bible." And you say, "Oh, now we all have to say we worship the same God, even though his God commands his followers to violently subjugate us and to wipe us out."
Yep. And declares that you're a false religion that's a twisted version of the real prophetic messages that all confirm is.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's another thing that is a problem. I know there was a big controversy over this recently, may still be going on, and I
It
didn't
is.
pay a whole lot of attention because, you know, you try to keep up with all this stuff. I don't know, I do nothing else. But in any case, I know the problem stems from the statement of the Roman Catholic Church in the Second Vatican Council that later on got put into the Catholic Catechism, that the Muslims and Christians worship the same God, and it's clear from the other statements of the Second Vatican Council that they don't mean don't evangelize or that these people are already saved or anything like that. It's very clear.
Mhm.
However, I have had extensive experience with Roman Catholics, including bishops, who didn't want to talk about the Muslim persecution of Christians and didn't even want to get even close to evangelizing Muslims because of that passage. And they did take it as meaning somehow that Muslims were already in the group and didn't need to be preached the gospel to, and so on.
Yeah, Robert. Someone. I saw a tweet from someone, and they said, if I were an outsider and I were judging um, what Christianity and Islam are based on the recent some of the recent claims that were made, he said, I would think that Islam is a sect of Christianity.
That's what John of Damascus said way back in the
No,
8th century.
no, not like a cult. He would think it's like
Oh,
an acceptable branch.
like,
Like you got yeah. So you got Christianity, and then you got Catholicism, Orthodoxy, Protestantism, and Islam.
yikes. Yeah, that's not going to work. I'm afraid that one of those is going to eat all the others if it can. All right. Robert Michaels says, loved your interview with Clavin this week. Thank you, Robert. And Apu Bakr Al Daddy, Mr. Spencer, do you believe West Bank should be ruled by Arab clans as opposed to the Palestinian Authority? Why or why not? Would this even be possible? In the first place, West Bank was renamed the West Bank in 1950 by the Jordanians. It had been called from time immemorial Judea and Samaria. They called it the West Bank in 1950 in order to obscure its Jewish identity. It is the land of the Jews, Judea. And the renaming was in service of the jihad against the Jews and everybody else. And so I don't think it should be ruled by Arab clans or the Palestinian Authority. I think Judea and Samaria should be ruled by the Judeans, that is, the Israelis. What do you think, David?
Well, I think he's referring to a story we went through recently. There is there are the I forget what his name is, but he's the He's the clan leader in Hebron, and he's saying we don't like the Palestinian Authority. These guys were imposed on us from outside. These were like, you guys make the Oslo Accords and suddenly tell us these guys are in charge of us. And he said, forever we've got our clan. That's who we're concerned about. And the Palestinian Authority has been complaining that these guys will shoot at people. The clan will shoot at people from the Palestinian Authority, but you won't shoot Jews. It's like they're going, because you guys are the problem. You guys are the ones who are causing the problem. And there was a situation a few years back where someone in the Palestinian Authority shot someone from the clan, just a young guy from the clan, and so on. And they said, we want the Palestinian Authority to hand that person over to us. We will deal with him. Palestinian Authority said no. This clan stormed, took over the police station, held like 24 of their Palestinian Authority officers hostage and stuff like this, and demanded compensation and so on. So these guys will actually buck. But these guys have been saying, we would be happy to work with Israel. We hate these guys. We hate these outsiders. We just want this little spot down here around Hebron, and they're saying, you don't even have to do any fighting for it. We will take on the Palestinian Authority. We'll do it. It's just right now, because of the Oslo Accords, Israel's on the side of the Palestinian Authority as maintaining control over the jihadis and stuff like that. So like, as far as the agreements go, you guys would actually be siding with them, and you would view us as terrorists or something like that for fighting against the Palestinian Authority. If you just let us deal, we will take over our area, and they won't dare come down there, and so on. And so it's a situation where you don't know exactly who to trust in all these situations, or trust people's intentions, because they're all fighting for power and stuff. But I'm kind of the view, as far like you're thinking like long term, who should be ruling and stuff. Whereas I'm thinking like shorter term, I got no problem these guys taking over a big chunk of a chunk of the land from the Palestinian Authority, because the Palestinian Authority controls it right now. Like worst case scenario, there'd be more division among these guys. But with that said, they could be totally sincere and serious, saying we've been here a long time. Our loyalty is to our clan, and we actually seek what's best for our clan, which is getting along with the people around us so that we can actually build a future. And the Palestinian Authority, they're saying in effect, he had a saying. It was something like only a calf. There's the calf that plows its own field that knows the field. Another calf from somewhere else, he doesn't know the field and stuff. But they're basically saying, because the Palestinian Authority, they're imposed on us from outside, they don't actually care about the people. We're all pawns. We're all pawns for them. We don't like being pawns. I actually care about the people in my family and in my city, and I want what's best for them. The reason these guys keep using us as cannon fodder, they do not care about us. They're outsiders. So they're saying, hey, why don't you let us take over this spot and see how it goes? We will do a better job of maintaining peace than these guys. So anyway, that's the idea. But they've actually been working with some Israeli leaders for a long time now to try and break free of the Palestinian Authority.
Well, I'm actually all for that. I think Oslo is very clearly a dead letter at this point. There's no reason for the Israelis or anybody else to adhere to any of its provisions. The Palestinians have broken it repeatedly. You can read in the Palestinian Delusion all about how it came about, how it was foredoomed from the start, and how it failed from the beginning. So, worth a try. But better than and pretty much anything would be better than the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria and Hamas in Gaza. Okay, Tezbot says, hi, a British imam told me context for violent verses were battles. Would that be indicative of what many Muslims believe, or smokescreen? Smokescreen it is. And the smokescreen is clear because if you look at the unbroken testimony of Islamic authorities, tafsir, that is commentaries on the Quran, and Islamic scholars from the 8th century, Ibn Ishaq, up until the 20th century, with the exception of a few in the West who have obvious apologetic motives, They all say that the violent passages are valid for all time and supersede the other passages. And so the idea that the violent passages are only for the 7th century, in the first place, it contradicts the idea that the Quran is valid for all time. Why did Allah fill it with all this stuff that's not valid for all time? But second, it is in contradiction to what the Islamic authorities actually say when they're not talking to Western non-Muslims.
And I would just add, it's false that these are given. These were all given in the context of battle. Some of them obviously were, but fight those who do not believe in Allah. That was not. Oh, they're coming to attack us. That was now we're going out and attacking them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and you can read Ibn Kathir's Battles of the Prophets on this. This is when Muhammad decided he's going out to fight the Romans. And they didn't. Yep. They weren't even interested. They didn't show up. But why is he going out to fight someone who's not coming to fight him? Because 929, fight those who do not believe in Allah, and specifically refers to the people of the book, Jews and Christians, until they pay you. This was a command to go out and subjugate the world. But yeah, you do have these claims that these things are defensive. It just doesn't make sense. Yes. Again, if fight those who do not believe in Allah were defensive, it would be fight people who are attacking you. That's how you say it. Mm-hmm. And if you want to say, oh, Allah means something completely different from what he says, okay, well, he's not the clear communicator he claims to be. And then when you go to the hadith, and Muhammad says things like, I've been commanded to fight people until they say there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Notice who that is. It's not people who are attacking you. It's I've been commanded to fight people until they say there's no God but Allah. And so you'd have to say the same thing about Muhammad that you'd say about Allah. If he actually meant self-defense, he is the all-time worst communicator ever. And it's kind of irrelevant. I made a video about this a long time ago, asking what's the practical difference, practically speaking. What's the difference between a religion that actually commands you to fight in the name of Allah and to subjugate people? And so he says, fight those who don't believe, and he means it, that he means exactly what he says. What's the difference between that and a religion that commands you, fight those who don't believe, but doesn't really mean it for some reason? Like, what's the difference?
Yep.
And the answer is practically speaking, there's no difference because when people are given the command, fight those who do not believe, you're still going to have some people, I don't want to fight, and they're going to make excuses and so on. And then there are people who are going to go out and obey it. And if for some reason Allah doesn't mean fight those who do not believe when he says fight those who do not believe, you're still going to have people who, oh, that's what Allah commands, so I'm going to go out and do it. You're still going to have other people who say, no, I'm going to reinterpret that. So you end up with the exact same thing, millions of people being slaughtered.
Yep. Only thing I would add at this point is 839, fight them until persecution is no more and religion is all for Allah. Now, if you're only defensive, then you would stop at persecution is no more. You fight them until they stop persecuting you. But if you're going to keep on fighting them till religion is all for Allah, then you're going to end up fighting a lot of people who are minding their own business and not doing anything and not bothering you and certainly not attacking you, but their religion is not all for Allah. So that's clearly offensive warfare. Tesbot also says, will Islamophobia law in UK be game over in your opinion? Yeah, I think so. I think it's game over in UK for already convicting a guy for burning the Quran, abandoning the freedom of speech, imprisoning some people for criticizing Islam, for mocking Islam. I don't know. It would have to take a massive change in the entire political culture of Britain for it to avoid becoming an Islamic state at this point.
Yeah, and I always say, they can turn this around at any point, but it's what Robert just said. It has to be some massive change. So we grant the possibility of massive change. It's just you guys give us no indication that you're about to have some sort of massive change. So all indications point to lots and lots and lots and lots of problems. And your only hope is you do have some people like Tommy who are taking a stand, and you have some people who are waking up. But sadly, those aren't the people calling the shots for the government right now. So,
yeah, if Britain wants to be saved as a free society and the home for the English and Scottish and Welsh people and the Northern Irish, then make Tommy prime minister. Other than that, you got trouble. Okay, we got Face the Fact says, just like poor Barack Hussein Obama, got to apologize, face the facts. I don't know what you're referring to. I guess that's the disadvantage of doing all these at the end. But anyway, apologies. Crazy Normie YT says, if NYC wants Islamo-tanky rule, I hope they enjoy it. Well, probably some people will. Pat's Leather Straps,
Yeah, yeah,
RS.
yeah,
Yeah.
Robert. It's just like every other situation with Germany and France and the UK and so on. When you got politicians doing all these insanely stupid things, and I always think, part of me says, okay, you asked for it, now you get it. You're about to get what you wanted, and it's almost like, okay, I don't have a problem with them subjugating you if you are begging to be violently subjugated as some, process of atoning for things that your great, 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 great grandfather did on the other side of the world. You think this is going to really atone for what you did by letting these guys subjugate you. You deserve exactly what you get, and it's going to be bad. Problem is, there are other people there who aren't asking for this and who don't want it and who aren't stupid. And they're the ones who are going to suffer. The last
Yes.
people that are going to suffer are the politicians, because they live in the posh neighborhoods. We don't have to deal with this stuff.
Yep. All right. Pat's Leather Strap says, RS, can you find the pic of Ilhan Omar no turban? I'll tell you, I've seen a picture of her. I think it was a mugshot, if I'm not mistaken, from some demonstration she was in and got arrested. And she just has conventional short hair. There is a fake photoshopped picture out there of her essentially bald with some tufts of hair here and there. That's totally fake. So I don't know if that's the one you're thinking of. Anyway, I'm not going to take the time to go hunting around for pictures of Ilhan Omar, but yeah, I'm sure you can find both pretty easily. All right, Searching Deeper says, don't you think, in order to get rid of Islam, the West may ban all religions to remain fair? I know of universities that banned all religious meetings, partly to block unwanted religions. The West ain't going to ban all religions. That's never
No,
going to happen
no.
because they won't want to offend Muslims. They don't care about the rest. But that will never happen because the West is not right now trying to stop Islam from expanding in the West. The Western authorities are aiding and abetting and bringing about the expansion of Islam in the West.
Yeah, I have no idea where where you are searching deeper, but the idea that Western governments are going, we're so desperate to stop Islam right now, we're just going to have to ban all religions to get it over with. Uh, That might have been a fantasy of like the new atheist 20 years ago, but it's not been working out well for them. So
There you
no,
go.
no one's on board with that.
Eunuch Petsu, an interesting name, says here ATS arrest terrorist Abu Bakr after 30 years hiding. I don't know who you're referring to, but I'm glad if they caught a terrorist.
Oh yeah, that's I think that was Australia, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
Abu Bakr Sadiq.
Oh, I've heard of him.
Mhm.
I'll have to look for that. Mother Hulda says, Robert, what drew you to making this your mission? Did you have a personal experience with Islam or simply saw a rational need? I simply saw.
Muslim beat him up when he was a kid, kicked sand in his face, and he said, "I will teach you. I will destroy your religion."
That's just what a lot of Muslims they write to me, but it's completely fictional. Actually, though, a lot of it comes out of an interest I had in the Islamic world because of my family, which is from the Islamic world, specifically from Turkey. They're not Turks; they were Greek Christians who were exiled from Turkey for not converting to Islam. And it was trying to figure out what had happened there and piece it all together because my grandparents did not want to talk about it, the people who were actually exiled, that led me into studying Islam. But after that, it becomes addressing a rational need in the 90s in consultation with some private individuals and groups. And then after 9/11, some of them asked me to go public and write a book, and there we are. I ain't been doing nothing else since then. So that actually wraps us up with the super chats this week. Thank you for all being here. Thank you all for the super chats. Thank you for not going jihad, those of you who have not waged a jihad attack this week. But if you do in the coming week, we will likely be here next week, God willing, to discuss it all and to show why you should oppose jihad. Till then, you know the story. Pray, hope, and don't worry.